Hi, I'm Loris Alexander. This is Bridge City News, and here are some of the top stories we've been following. Beginning next week, a select number of pharmacies in Alberta will be able to provide COVID-19 vaccines. Plus, we speak with tax agencies about what looks different this year. And we speak to a Lethbridge power couple who started their own podcast inspiring everyone who listens.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Thanks for joining us. Beginning next week, a select number of pharmacies in Alberta will be able to provide COVID-19 vaccines. You can include the medicine shop near Chinook Regional Hospital in Lethbridge in that group. They will be providing vaccines to seniors above the age of 65.
We'll be rolling out the immunization from next week. We were advised to start immunizing from Monday, and we will be getting 300 doses of Moderna vaccine. We are just waiting for the shipment confirmation date, which date it will actually arrive here. Most probably the way we are getting information from Blue Cross will be Monday. So what we are doing is right now we are creating the list for the first 300 people for the next week. So we can have it ready, because once we receive the dose, we want to finish it up within the same week, because we'll be getting 300 doses every week. So we want to keep up the space too. So that's why we ramp up the capacity for our staff. People are encouraged just to phone the pharmacy, and from next week the booking will be open through website or through Facebook too. And it will be just the first dose they'll be getting it.
If you're over 65 and would like to get the vaccine, you can call the medicine shop. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this is going to be a tax season like no other. BCN spoke with a local accountant about what you can expect when filing your taxes this year.
There are three things they're going to notice it's very different compared to years past. First of all, for the 2020 income taxes, the deadline has not been removed yet.
Despite this being a more complex tax season, the Canada Revenue Agency has not extended the tax filing deadline. The due date is still April 30th for most Canadians and June 15th for self-employed people.
From day one when CERB was announced, the government made it very clear that those were taxable benefits. So for an individual taxpayer who is receiving CERB benefits, they're going to get a form called a T4E issued by the federal government, which has to be declared for their income tax because they're going to pay income taxes on those monies that they've received. The second major change is for anyone who was employed in an office setting and they had to work from home. The government is offering a tax credit for those particular ones because they had to work at home instead of going to the office like they were used to because of COVID-19. And then the third major change that has affected a lot of Canadians is the receipt of any type of emergency response benefits such as the CERB payment. The government is giving taxpayers who owe income tax on that money up until April 30th of 2022 to pay it off with no interest or penalties.
If you need more information about filing this year, you can always call the CRA tax hotline at 1-800-959-8281. You may know Lowell and Julie Taylor from The Amazing Race. No strangers to media, the Taylors have a wealth of achievements under their belts, and now they have something more to add to that list. They've recently started a podcast called Obstacles and Opportunities. Take a look.
We really have this idea, how do we share stories? And everybody can teach you something if you're listening. And if you're curious, if you're interested, people have an amazing story to tell. And we are able to highlight that, and we're pretty good at asking questions. My job is to speak with people. I'm a psychologist, Julie's a speech pathologist, and interacting with others is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, we're genuinely interested in other people's stories, and also we both listen to podcasts ourselves.
Yeah.
And one of our favorite podcasts is Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert, and it's one of the most popular podcasts as well. So our format, we kind of looked at what he did, and okay, that makes sense then to do a similar type of format, and that flowed really naturally for us. So
every conversation can lead to a new conversation, and we want to be diverse in who we're speaking to. Mother's Day podcast to speak to a new mom heading to the Olympics. We have Green Shirt Day.
Yeah.
We're going to try to aim for the specific days as they come out. We want to highlight different stories. So we're starting with the stories of elite athletes, Paralympians and Olympians, past and present, and future hopefuls. But we also can spin this off. Obstacles and opportunities are in every area. So that can be in health and wellness. It can be in business. It can be in all sorts of things, in parenting. So we can spin obstacles and opportunities however we want.
And one thing that I've loved about this is we like to kind of research our guests and be on top of their story a little bit, so we have, ideas of questions to ask and where the conversation might go. But our kids have been involved with that. Our kids are almost 8 and 9, and so we're watching documentaries about these people and looking up their websites and all different YouTube videos, and then they have questions, and they've often contributed questions to the podcast as well. So it's been kind of an unexpected family activity too.
All you need to start a podcast is a microphone, which almost every device has in it now, and something to say. And it's free, it's easy to do, and there are enough people out there who will be interested in what you have to say. Just start, share your voice, and it's consistency. If you just do one and nobody follows, that makes sense. The idea is to put it out, be consistent, and keep sharing your message, and people will start to follow, and hopefully there's some value in it for us as well as for those who are listening.
Hair salons that have been allowed to reopen in Alberta have been scrambling to slot in a backlog of clients who are looking to clean up during the lockdown.
Busy, because of course everybody's been waiting. And after the first shutdown, it was ridiculous busy. The spa, people were a little bit more nervous to come back, but this time it's been busy, but a little bit more steady busy, which is fabulous. And people are coming back to the spa.
Taitula says the best part is her guests and staff are all amazing to work with.
We have great guests. We have a team that has this amazing culture. We're just so thankful and happy that we get to see our guests again. I had a guest say to us the other day, I feel safer at Brio than I do at Costco.
Business is going exceptionally well as the appointments are rolling in.
Some of our service providers book a year out. But for sure, even our newer service providers are booking in advance now, just because people are still catching up. And I think that there's some feeling of normalcy. When we get to go get our hair cut, or we get a facial, or we get our lashes done, pedicure, I know there's that feeling of things just feels more normal. It's something normal that we get to do. I'm just so thankful that there's this whole shopping local thing. And I feel like Lethbridge people really, really take that to heart. And we're local. Lethbridge has been amazing to myself and my family. And so we support local as well, and we'll do whatever we can to keep local businesses going here in Lethbridge.
A 17-year-old Lethbridge High School student is keeping busy these days with a thriving business.
I just kind of started it when one of our friends, Tanis, just wanted her car detailed, and I've been planning this out for a bit. So maybe 2 months prior to this, I had it planned out, and just when Tanis wanted it detailed, I was like, you know what, I'll just buy some of the tools I've been planning out and just start right now. I've had at least 5 people and 6 cars total wanting to be detailed, mainly the interior, not many exterior, maybe one exterior detail, but that's about it. So business is going pretty well so far, honestly. I didn't expect this much interest so quickly. In terms of my own time, it's been a little hectic a little bit, but I'm trying to manage school and my other job that I have. I have $5,000 saved from my other job currently. I'm saving up for a house, but also a new car. It's a little half and half. I kind of want a house. I kind of want my own car, like a new car. I have my own car right now, but maybe something newer would be kind of cool. I plan to make a website soon enough. Also, Facebook Messenger works very well, so those options are just great.
If you'd like to have your car detailed, you can contact Josh at the phone number below. Get ready to spring forward. Daylight savings time begins Sunday, March 14th at 2 a.m. with clocks moving ahead 1 hour. The time change brings an extra hour of sunlight each day for the next 8 months, but it can also cause us to lose some sleep. Recapping one of our top news stories, beginning next week, a select number of pharmacies in Alberta will be able to provide COVID-19 vaccines. You can include the medicine shop near Chinook Regional Hospital in Lethbridge in that group. They'll be able to provide vaccines to seniors above the age of 65. And a look at weekend weather. Don't forget to spring forward tonight as we lose an hour heading into spring. Clear skies with a low of +1 tonight. Tomorrow, sunshine with a south wind 20 kilometers per hour, gusting to 40 and a high of 16 degrees.
Today's weather is brought to you by ColumbianDirect.com. Café Coffee, specialty coffee from our family to yours.
There are CRE tax scams, pet scams, even scams with the promise of employment. Coming up next, we chat with Ron Riemann of the Better Business Bureau, who discusses how you can protect yourself and your family from the scam artists who call or email you. That interview's up next.
Each and every year, Canadians lose millions upon millions of dollars to scammers, to the fraudsters. Why and how does this happen? And what can we do to avoid getting caught in a scam? Joining me now to talk about it is Ron Riemann, Marketplace Trust Representative with the Southern Alberta branch of the Better Business Bureau. Ron, welcome back to BCN.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Hal.
You bet. Now, first of all, can you explain a little bit to our viewers what the Better Business Bureau is all about?
Well, the Better Business Bureau has been helping people find businesses, brands, and charities they can trust. Millions of people turn to the BBB each year to view BBB business profiles and charity reports, all available for free on bbb.org. And we offer this free of charge. We're not a government affiliated government agency, so we're a nonprofit. So we encourage people to always use our website.
So Ron, the Better Business Bureau of Canada has come out with a scam tracker risk report for 2020 and a top 10 list of fraudulent scams that are ripping off Canadians. Can you explain the criteria used to rank the risk index?
Well, what happened is that we try to get as much data as we can, and it's available on bbb.org. And it's the risk report is collected and analyzed by the BBB Institute for the Marketplace Trust. And the most prevalent scams of 2020 were calculated and collected, and we found that surprisingly there were some new entries on our top 10 list, but in some cases there were not a lot of surprises. So a lot of data was, I guess we could say, taken in by the BBB Institute, and then we put together this top 10 ranking.
You know, we have a fairly significant senior population here in southwestern Alberta. Do you feel that maybe seniors are potentially at higher risk, maybe more vulnerable?
They sure are. They're lonely. They're vulnerable, and for the fact is that COVID kind of accelerates this loneliness, and scammers aren't stupid. They understand the way the I guess seniors operate in terms of you know, for seniors a handshake is just as good as a contract, and so the scammers they'll prey on that, and unfortunately it's kind of like even worse during the COVID crisis. And so we tell seniors to of course ignore these sort of scams. At the same time, we as family members should look out after our seniors, well, moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, you know, and talk to them and help them understand that you don't necessarily have to talk to these people. You can hang up. You've got the power of doing what you need to do. Talk to your family. That's the most important thing to remember.
So advance fee loans came in at #1 on your top 10 list. What exactly is advance fee loans?
Yeah, this is where a fake lender will ask you to pay for upfront fees to cover the administrative costs of a loan. And of course, these are scams, and we encourage you to contact us or the police about, you know, if that sort of thing happens. And it's quite prevalent not only in this part of the country, but all across Canada too. So, and I found that quite surprising. I knew the advanced fee loans would be in the top 10, but I didn't think it'd be #1 this year, to be quite honest. So,
Where are a lot of these scammers originating from? Are they in Canada, the United States, different countries around the world? Because sometimes I know when they reach out to me, even some of the phone calls, the weird accents, the bizarre accents that they have a lot of times, and their grammar isn't the greatest, their English isn't very strong. You know, I'm wondering where a lot of these scammers and fraudsters live.
It's a very good question, and we do get that question quite a lot. You know, at the office, I do get some of those phone calls, and they'll ask me, and quite honestly, I couldn't tell them because the fact is they could be anywhere. It's quite prevalent in Quebec for our country, anyways. Some of the hotspots around the world include China, Russia, India, and even the United States. So, and it's unfortunately we have to tell the consumers that do ask us, can you find out where this person is. I have their telephone number, but a lot of times they buy or they probably use multiple phone numbers. So phoning these numbers only kind of funnels it to a call center. So it's really, really hard to kind of narrow down an IP address, let alone a phone number.
You know, it's interesting too, you see a lot of these CRA scams saying the cops are going to come get you if you don't pay me in iTunes gift cards. What? How do they think that's even legit? But, you know, apparently they're making some big money at the same time when they're doing this. Or they'll say, you know, your TELUS account is overdue. Pay us now. Click on this link, even though somebody may not have a TELUS account. But I guess maybe the scammers are thinking they can be quite successful with these scams.
It's a sense of urgency. We talked about this before we had this interview, and we talked about the most important thing that the scammers always rely on, because time is money to a lot of these scammers, because they have to make multiple amount of phone calls on a daily basis. And of course, there's this sense of urgency to the caller that they need the money right now, or else there will be either collections, or there will be the local officials, the police will be involved, or the CRA may freeze your account, and the list goes on and on and on. And of course, that's not how they operate. And scammers have only one goal in mind, is to get your personal information and of course your money. So again, it goes back to the caller and also to anybody who gets this sort of phone call. You have the power to actually hang up. And I tell consumers a lot of time when they call me, they've had 2 or 3 phone calls, and I say, because I understand the pattern sometimes of some scammers, not all, but some scammers, they'll phone 3, 4 times. Perhaps they'll leave a voice message, perhaps they won't. It depends on how urgent the other side of the phone call really is. And we tell people, even as much as you want to talk to this person to say, please leave me alone, it just leaves that door open for that scammer to continue phoning and try and get the information or the money they want from you. So we encourage you just to stop. Just let them leave the voice message, let them phone. Eventually they will move on. They won't leave you alone permanently. I've had instances where consumers will phone and say, I've had them last year, now they're phoning me again, and what can I do? Same process. And it's unfortunate and it's rude, because they'll phone you any time of day or night, and it can be frustrating.
Now, Ron, here's something you say: with the scammers, time is money. They have to hook as many people as possible. So here's an idea. How about you keep them on the phone for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes and kind of reel them in and scam them and con them a little bit, so they're not, you know, you're tying them up so they're not scamming other people. You know, play along with them for a little while. Just don't give any personal information.
And some consumers have done that too. They've actually literally purposely kept them on the line, and it just annoys them even more. And you would think they would probably, you know, curb them away from phoning you again in the future, but it can work. But in some cases, they'll phone again, and perhaps maybe another person will call instead of that person, and then become even more aggressive. So it can work for you, but at the same time can also backfire too.
So Ron, what should someone do if they've discovered that they have in fact been scammed?
When I do get a phone call from a consumer, knowing that perhaps their personal information or their financial accounts have been compromised, the first thing I encourage them to do is to check their bank account via their smartphone, or their computer. If that's not accessible, then I encourage them to phone their bank and to let them know about perhaps if there has been illegitimate or improper spending on their account. to watch out for it. Banks are pretty good for the fact that they understand your spending patterns for the most part. If they know what your spending patterns are like for the last umpteen years or whatever the case may be, they'll understand that there'll be a red flag showing. And for the most part, they'll probably phone you. Credit card companies is another good place that you should probably phone to, just in case that your credit card gets compromised too. Perhaps in 2-3 months' time, phone the two big credit card, I guess the Equifax and TransUnion, who are in charge of your credit rating. Get a hold of them in about 2-3 months' time and talk to them if you know that your credit rating has also been compromised too, because there's nothing worse than having your ratings go down and plummet for somebody else's bad behavior.
Yeah, poor credit, that's right, absolutely. You don't want to see the scammers take advantage and cause your credit to plummet. Now, Ron, how are people getting caught online? What are some of the things we really need to watch out for?
How are people getting caught online? It's really, really hard. It's almost that there are certain elements of it that people have to look for to avoid a scam online. Is just check the spelling. Also check perhaps that I guess the grammar could be off a bit too. Also check too if there's a physical location or not. And if there's a link, please avoid hitting that link, because all it does is it opens up a Pandora's box, so to speak, for the scammer. So little things to look out for, especially the grammatical errors. That's the one key thing to look for anyways. Most institutions, and including us, we've been scammed too. We've been utilized in a scam too, that they'll use your letterhead and they'll put it on their email to make it look really official. But we encourage a lot of people to update their antivirus software at the same time too. Most of them, not all the time, it will go to the junk or the spam folder, but we encourage them to always keep it updated, and understand your computer that it'll always do updates for you. And if you haven't done an update, please do so. And that'll actually filter out a lot of the online problems that could may not come to your computer. So we encourage you to do that.
Ron, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted so many people across the province, including right here in Lethbridge. So many people are desperate trying to find work. Employment scams were actually at number 5 of your top 10 list here. Can you explain how this one works, the employment scam?
If you're looking for employment, there's job postings out there that there's fake recruiter emails, and there's work at home schemes, and these cons actually use real company names, and they can be very convincing, and it may look as though you are starting a great new career, but you're really giving personal information or money to scammers. I actually had a phone call from somebody from South Africa about a month ago, and they actually checked on a company in Calgary, an oil and gas company in Calgary, and they were going to apply for a job. It turned out that the company's website was a hoax. They actually grabbed all the information and kind of moved it around a bit and made it look really authentic. And what happened was this couple from South Africa phoned me and said, "Is this legit?" And we had to do a little bit of a search on this company and found out it was just a copycat. And basically, they just wanted some money to get the people in from South Africa to Calgary, and basically it was like kind of an upfront fee. But there was no job, there was no opening, and basically what happened was, if that couple didn't phone us, their likelihood they would have lost their money, and or they probably, if they went to Calgary, if they had the money and they didn't have any visa problems, they probably would have been out of luck. They wouldn't have had a job. So we always encourage people just to make sure to phone and do their homework, and because it should, those websites can look really good, but sometimes they may not appear what they seem to be. Do your homework on the company. Basically what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Ron, any final reminder for our viewers on how to really avoid and sniff out a scam, and maybe how the Better Business Bureau can really help, be of assistance?
we're always there to help. And if people want to know more information about scams or anything that come their way, we encourage them to go on our website. We have a special place on our website called the Scam Tracker. If they feel they've been duped, or they know somebody who knows of suspicious behavior of a company or something that people should be aware of, Scam Tracker on our website is a great place to go to. You can also get the updated information if you want to learn more about the current scams. We want to stay one step ahead of the scammers. It's a tough time to be in right now with this COVID pandemic, and it's only accelerating all these scams. And we encourage people to educate themselves, come to our website, or certainly phone us, and we can try our best to help you. And education is the key thing, Hal.
Thanks so much for your time today, Ron. Ron Riemann is with the Southern Alberta branch of the Better Business Bureau. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Hal.
The Alberta budget is out. Now, what does that mean for Lethbridge and Southern Alberta? COVID-19 continues to present us with a lot of challenges, and where are we headed over the next few months? Joining me now to talk about some of these interesting challenges is Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf, joining me from his Lethbridge office. Nathan, the budget is forecasting an $18.2 billion deficit with annual interest payments on that debt hovering around $3 billion. Let me ask you, is this really sustainable?
Well, this is something that we had to do in the short term, Hal. When your private economy is struggling, you don't really want to cut out the legs of your public sector at the same time. We need to get our economy back on our feet. We've kept this fairly stable. Stability is really important in the marketplace right now. And we do have a path forward. I think you can talk to just about anybody out there. They recognize that tough times are tough times, and the government has to be there to stabilize things. And I think we've hit the mark on this budget.
What kind of feedback are you receiving from constituents, though, on this deficit budget?
Well, you know what, again, we're getting, for the most part, we're getting a lot of understanding. This isn't where people would choose to be, but nor is a global recession or a war on the price of oil or a pandemic, when we've been hit by all three. So I think, like I said, the message that the government wanted to send in this budget is stability, that we're here, that we have a path forward. And for the most part, what I'm hearing back is we've hit that target.
Now, the health budget went up by about $1 billion, Nathan. What benefits can we really expect here in Lethbridge out of the increased health budget?
Well, I don't have any details yet. I do expect that some of those capital expenses and projects will be announced throughout the year, as governments tend to do. So I don't have those details. But what I do know is that this South Zone, in terms of healthcare, has been leading the province in terms of efficiency, innovation programs, for years. They've done a great job with that. And I expect that whatever dollars they get or investment, capital investment they receive, it will be well used and well managed.
Now, the province has reached a tentative deal with doctors in the Alberta Medical Association. Do you think this will really keep doctors from leaving the province and hopefully attracting even maybe more physicians to Southern Alberta?
Absolutely. I can't speak much to the ongoing process. I know it needs to be ratified, but even the numbers would bear out that Alberta is still a very desired destination. In 2020, we actually had a net increase of almost 250 doctors coming to Alberta, even though we were in some challenging times. And again, stability is the word that allows that to continue to flourish and grow and meet the needs of our citizens here in Alberta.
Now, there were some cutbacks in education funding. To what degree will this affect Lethbridge College and the University of Lethbridge?
And yeah, I'll make a slight distinction there. It's education funding was stable or went up a little bit, but advanced ed, there were some reductions. That is a challenge, possibly more than any of my colleagues with a college and a university in town. It has a double impact. So I have met with both administrative teams. They are just excellent to work with. They've got a plan to work forward. I'm working with them on some innovative ideas, and hopefully some things would allow them some flexibility to make some of these transition and changes. They have been incredible to work with, and I have no doubt that they will lead not only Lethbridge, but the entire province in their sector in getting us through this to better days ahead.
You know, many students and post-secondary students and parents are really concerned that a lot of this will be passed on from the university and the college to the students with tuition increases, and then all of a sudden books are twice the price. How do you respond to that?
Well, there's a reality. There's a reality there for sure. I have 4 kids of university age this year, and 4 of them that will have taken part in some sort of class or course load. So I feel that personally. What I've said to most students and people along the way is people are willing to invest what's needed in their education if they have a job at the end. And that's where I can really make a difference and really focus and really work on making sure our economy gets on its feet. So that investment by the students is worth something at the end. It's one thing to ask them to chip in a little more without that hope in the future. But if that's there, let me tell you, Harvard isn't free, but they don't have any problem packing the house out and people paying top dollar. Why? Because they can get a really good job at the end. That's what I'm after in Alberta. And I'm working on the positive side of that equation and doing what I can there, while also helping the university administrations doing what they can to manage their side of it.
Now, what about municipal funding, Nathan? Is the city of Lethbridge going to see any cutbacks or potential increases?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a story of both. So over a 4-year cycle, the funding is pretty constant with what they would have seen in a previous 4-year cycle. But due to economic pressures, mostly related to COVID and needing to relaunch Alberta, we've pulled a lot of that funding forward. So if we start today and look at the next 3 years, municipalities will see roughly a 25% decrease in funding, but we've pulled a lot of that funding forward. So this is really going to be on the shoulders of municipalities to plan well. Those dollars are here today to get us back on to the spending that they need to do for investment in their capital projects, and it'll roll out over the next couple of years. But again, you don't want to spend all your allowance today, Hal, and not save anything for tomorrow. So there's going to be a little planning needed.
Now, Nathan, there have also been some concerns voiced about provincial cutbacks to agriculture when it comes to applied research. As you know, here in southwestern Alberta, horticulture, agriculture, that's our bread and butter. Your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another one I'm keeping my eye on. I'm calling this one a ministry in transition. A lot of those dollars went from the agricultural file to our advanced education file. And we have top-notch institutions at the college and university. So I've asked them to work with research so we make sure we end up on the right side of this. But a lot of people have shared your concern, and I'm watching it closely to see where we end up and where we land on this. Having farmer-led research, having industry-led research is great, but it's also something that is, like you said, literally our bread and butter, and we want to watch that closely for the future.
Now, let's talk about funding when it comes to combating the opioid crisis here in southern Alberta and to help provide facilities for those to recover, maybe turn their lives around. Any new money coming in that regard?
We have maintained our commitment for $140 million a year. Ongoing for the province, and Lethbridge gets its the lion's share, not the lion's share. We get our fair share plus on that because we know we've really faced those issues recently. A lot of our announcements last year, we are actually seeing them come into being this year, whether it's an additional 150 treatment beds, whether it's $2 million of ongoing operational funding for facilities in Lethbridge and Fort Macleod. We have our drug court that actually came online in the fall and is now actively helping a lot of those people caught in that cycle to get into something better. So I think we've got really bright days ahead. Lethbridge has got a future to look forward to, and Lethbridge has definitely got funding to make some of those dreams a reality.
Now, is there any help being offered in the budget for the struggling energy sector?
There is actually. We partnered last year with the federal government to come up with $1 billion for oil well reclamation. About 500 million of that is going to be rolled out this year. So not only are we helping that sector, who we know is down on their knees, although the current prices are pretty good, we're also helping reclaim those abandoned oil wells, clean up our environment, get some of those things cleaned up that have been on the to-do list for decades, literally. And but we've also put forward initiatives in hydrogen, in geothermal, and in nuclear to again really help that energy side of our industry get back up on its feet.
I guess you can't put all your eggs into the oil and gas basket, right? It's good to diversify when it comes to the economy. Now let's chat a bit about the COVID-19 pandemic. Nathan, case numbers continue to come down, which is wonderful to see. Are we going to see more restrictions lifted fairly soon? And the reason I ask is business owners I talk to every day, they're struggling, as you know, especially here in Lethbridge. Like Len Binning, who owns the Movie Mill, he's not sure how much longer he can stay afloat.
Absolutely. I've heard that loud and clear, and that is what I'm advocating for, is to look at the whole approach again, and maybe in a new light. I think what we're seeing now is that, as you know, how humans are complex beings. We're not just physical. We have social needs, we have mental needs and emotional needs, we have spiritual needs. There are these sides of the equation that we haven't really looked at in order to protect people's lives on a medical front. We've done, I think, a reasonable job of that. But now we need to look at the rest of it. We need to open up all of our economy. People derive a huge amount of personal satisfaction and well-being when they go to work. We have to allow every single Albertan that opportunity, and yet do it in a way that's safe and protects those who might be vulnerable. So this is a challenge, but I'm advocating for a new look at that, to realize that we as humans, we're not just a one-dimension being, and we're not just a physical. Lots of seniors really talk about their need to see their children, their grandchildren, and we need to find a way to make this safe. Giving a person a hug is probably one of the best medicines we have. It's been around since day one, and I look forward to being able to get back to it.
Have you talked to many pastors as well? Because I know a lot of churches, still 15%, other ones doing online services. Look what's happened just outside of Edmonton with James Coates. He's now in jail. A pastor's in jail, if you can believe it or not. You know, and the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is talking right now about his release potential to get him out before his trial date on May the 3rd. I never thought we'd reach this point. So what is the church, what is the religious community telling you right now, Nathan?
Well, I'm very, very thankful for all the religious leaders in Lethbridge. I've spoken to many of them. We haven't had that situation here because they have really taken the path of caring for others. We know that it's been a financial burden for them. We know it's been a challenge for them. Many of them have had to totally adjust their schedules and how they get together and do that in a safe way. But I really believe that they've taken a leadership approach and a very caring approach. And I would hope that Pastor Coates would be able to also realize that this pandemic has impacted every single one of us in a different way. This isn't just about one person changing their life. This is about all of us having to adjust our life and lifestyles. And it's about putting someone else first. It's not just about me. This is not about preaching the word. This is not about the religious side of it. He could go free tomorrow. This is about how do we protect others in a responsible and caring way. Believe me, none of us want to see pastors in jail.
Now, what about vaccines, Nathan? What is it looking like as to the availability and the actual administering of the vaccines coming in?
Well, I think each day we're getting more and more good news. AstraZeneca was put online. I hear Johnson & Johnson should be approved in the next few days. We are starting finally, after many months, to get a more consistent vaccine supply. And then I can't speak highly enough of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, dentists. Every single one of these professionals has offered to step up, or these groups have offered to step up. That way, every single dose we get of vaccine is going to end up in an arm very soon, much quicker. We know we've had some bumps on the road rolling out the program to seniors on day one, but since that time, we've really turned it around. We are now getting multiple calls every day with seniors who are able to book their vaccination. That gives them hope. These things are all important. And more than that, we have the competent healthcare professionals able to meet that demand when we get the supply.
Now, speaking of hope, let's talk and hope that perhaps Alberta doesn't have to pay as much into equalization payments. I know Premier Kenney's fighting for that. Where do we stand at this point in time? Because, I mean, we're struggling as a province here, and many Albertans argue that we can't afford to give away billions of dollars to help prop up other provinces when we're struggling ourselves.
For sure. And that's always a challenge. Alberta has always been right there to support and help every other province in Canada. This is a time where we need a little bit of help ourselves. And we continue to work on every level, every ministry, the premier, to talk to the federal government and say, listen, this is a time where we need some help. Having a vote or referendum on equalization could send a combative tone. We need to let the federal government know that we're serious. We need them to work with us. I don't really want to go down that road any further than we have to. Everybody I talk to pretty much loves Canada. I love putting on the red and white at Olympic time. I love putting on the red and white whenever we're facing the Americans in any kind of situation. But we need a little help, and that street needs to go both ways. And we're doing what we can to make sure that we get recognized for the good that we bring the country year after year, faithfully and pretty much without complaint. So yeah, that's an ongoing discussion. As you know, it's not simple and it's not a one and done. We got to keep working at it.
Now, speaking of referendums, do you think there would be the potential of a referendum on an HST, a provincial sales tax, harmonized with the GST to help balance the books and get Alberta out of red and back into black? I mean, it'll take away the Alberta advantage. I'm a native Albertan like yourself, and I can't possibly see that happening in our province. But stranger things have happened, Nathan.
True. I think the premier has been very clear that's not going to happen this year, and I would doubt it would happen this term. It's a conversation that we as Alberta need to have. If there was ever that conversation, it would absolutely go to a referendum, so Albertans would have their voice and their say. I, for one, have heard from quite a variety of people on that, and I couch it in the phrase of a tax reform. It's not the simple silver bullet. It's not going to save us from every woe. If we do introduce that, I think there needs to be consideration for seniors, those who are on a fixed budget, that there would be some exemption. So it's not just money in, there would also be money out. And that's why I say it's part of a larger conversation for me. And if we reform things to become more efficient, I'm okay with that. But it's not the magic bullet that's just going to save us from all of this.
Nathan Newdorf, UCP, MLA for Lethbridge East. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate it.
A number of surveys are showing that married couples say the pandemic has increased stress levels on their marriage. What's interesting and somewhat strange, though, is that a number of major media outlets have been making a case that divorce in the COVID-19 era is actually a good thing. Joining me to discuss this is Kimberly Holmes. She's the CEO of Marriage Helper, and she is joining me via Zoom from Nashville, Tennessee. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Kimberly, can you first of all share a bit about yourself and about Marriage Helper?
Absolutely. So the best way I can explain about me is by giving you a little bit of the backstory of how Marriage Helper got started. And our founder, Dr. Joe Beam, and his wife, they had been married for about 15 years back in the 1980s before he decided that he felt like he could be happier with someone else and in a different situation. And he actually divorced his wife and left her and her 2 children. And they were divorced for 3 years. And during that 3 years, Dr. Beam himself would tell you that he became a person that he honestly didn't even like anymore. He went places he never thought he'd go, did things he never thought he'd do. And one day woke up and said, "What have I done?" He actually called his ex-wife back, her name is Alice, and asked her if she would take him back, to which she said, "No, I don't know. I mean, everyone in her life told her not to. Her family was saying, you're already divorced. Why would you go back to this? How do you know you can trust him again?" But ultimately, Alice said to herself, do I believe that Joe, Dr. Beam, is a good person who has done some bad things? Or do I believe that he is a bad person who has done bad things? And she knew at her core that he was a good man. And she believed it was the right thing to do, to take him back and to see if they could make it work. They remarried, and at first they did not love each other, but they figured out how to fall back in love with each other. And as a result, in celebration of that second marriage, they had a 3rd daughter, which is me. And so I actually am a product of 2 people who were divorced, all odds against them, but saving their marriage. And from their story, they said, how can we help people who are either going through this, or how can we help people so that they don't have to go through this? And so in 1999, my parents developed, my dad specifically, a 3-day workshop that has been around for over 20 years now and has over a 70% success rate at saving marriages. And I got involved after college. Never thought I would go into this. That wasn't a plan of mine, but I caught the vision of the marriages that could be saved and the hope that needs to be put out there. And so I've been with Marriage Helper for 9 years now, and I owe my life to what Marriage Helper has done, but I've also been able to see thousands of people save their marriage and leave a legacy for their family as well.
Yeah, no kidding. And you obviously know firsthand about that coming from that family, and you probably saw things from a completely different perspective, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And another part of it is it's interesting that my sisters and I both have the same set of parents, but I have never experienced divorce and my sisters have. And you see the effects of that in the way that we live our lives, even though my family is close and my sisters have forgiven my father and we are a close family now, there were still effects of what happened during those 3 years that are just there. And so I see firsthand how divorce affects children. And I also see how I wasn't affected by it. And I have to tell you, I am passionate about helping children not have to experience that if they don't have to.
Yeah, it's interesting how you and your sisters have such different experiences with that, because they actually went through the divorce with their parents, whereas you were the product of it afterwards. So now for viewers watching who might be divorced, this of course isn't about condemning anyone, right? But it does seem strange that some media outlets have been arguing that divorce in this COVID-19 era is actually a good thing. So what exactly do you believe is beneficial about it?
Well, let's talk about what the message is that's out there, because like you said, divorce, even for people who don't want it, sometimes is going to happen. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this message out there that is saying divorce is a first option, right? Like if you aren't happy or if you're too stressed out, then perhaps this is the next step for you. Just divorce, like it's an easy decision. Just divorce, and then you'll have 2 weeks to be completely focused on your work, to self-care, to get your massages, to do all the things. And then you can have 2 weeks to be a present parent. And that's just the new way to live your life. And there was a lot of articles in the past year that have gone out that have really been promoting this as an option. And that is what I believe we have to look out at and say, research doesn't support this. Research, if we were to actually believe what we see of how divorce affects children and how divorce affects individuals, then we should know that we should do things to try and save the marriage before choosing to end it. And of course, there are people who are going to do those things to try and save the marriage, and the divorce still may happen. But at least when people have tried to save it and they can look at themselves at the end of it and say, I know I did everything I could, what we have seen is those people end up having a better future anyway for themselves as an individual, because they have learned how to be the best that they can be individually.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned children, of course. So is there any evidence that divorce could be good for kids, or evidence on the other side that it's got negative outcomes? I mean, there must be lots of research about this, and I'm sure you've looked at it all.
Yes, there is. I actually did my master's thesis in how divorce affects children. And so I've looked at the research, and a couple of the longitudinal studies are really interesting. And they say that when parents are fighting, and a lot of the narrative that we hear is, well, it's better for kids because they don't need to be in a home of parents who research calls high conflict, but basically the parents who they fight all the time. And here's what's true. The best thing for children, according to the research, is that the parents learn how to work through things and fix their problems, especially for the children to watch that happen. This is the best thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen for children is that parents divorce and continue to fight. How often is that what happens though? Where they do end up divorcing, but they still haven't worked through their issues. They still aren't co-parenting where they like each other, where they're amicable, where all of those things are happening. And that's the worst thing that can happen for children. So regardless of what happens, the two parents, when they're going to be co-parenting, have got to figure out how to co-parent well and to be friendly to each other and resolve their differences.
Absolutely. Now, you say that couples who take the time to invest in their marriages and get good counseling have a much higher rate of staying married.
Yes, absolutely. You know, a lot of people, I have seen it with the thousands we've worked with at Marriage Helper, when they come to us and they say, but there's just no hope. Our counselor has told us there's no hope, our pastor, our friends, our family, whoever it is. So I just don't know if this will work. I believe one of the obstacles for most people to even getting help in the first place is they just believe there's no hope, because they don't see in their direct life, their friends or family, they don't see the struggles people go through and work through. And so when we experience in the walls of our home where there's a disconnection between our spouse, there's no intimacy anymore, there's no more romance, no more passion, there's a lot of fighting, you can feel alone in that and you don't know what to do. And so what we have seen is when people at least begin to take that first step, and even if it's just one person to begin with, because it can just start with one person to begin to save the marriage. But even when they just begin to start that and get help and figure out what are the things I need to do for me, but also the best things to do to set a foundation to bring my marriage back together. But it's going to be helpful for me to know either way. We see so many times that it ends up being what saves their marriage, even if they thought at first that there was no hope for them.
Yeah, that's unreal. So why do couples choose not to get marriage help? Is it considered a stigma? Are they scared?
I think part of it. You know, there's a lot of reasons. One of the studies I even read just a couple of weeks ago talked about how, because the stigma of counseling and getting marriage help was so high, that most couples, over 60% of them, wait for 6 years after problems have started before they actually reach out to get help. And by that point, things haven't gotten better, right? Nothing gets better when you just let it simmer for 6 years. Things have only gotten worse. And so it can build up so much that not only is there stigma, but they're having to really say to themselves, is there something wrong with me? Or they're having to ask, did I marry the right person? All of these things which just go into, it's a lot, it's very vulnerable when you get to that point, right? And a lot of people, they don't know, and also they don't know who to trust or who to go to. That's another huge part of it. And what we have found is that counseling, even if you look at the Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, that for couples who are in crisis, even their noted gold standard of success rate after a year of working with them is 50%. And after 2 to 3 years, it goes down to 30%. Because counseling can be very, very difficult. You have two couples or two people who are going in and talking with a counselor, and one of them doesn't want to be there. It's very easy for that person to shut down, to feel like they're being attacked, and to just kind of go along for the ride, but say, none of this applies to me. I don't want to be here. Which is why we're finding more and more that more of these group-based activities like seminars or conferences can be really effective, because it doesn't feel as focused on just the person who doesn't want to be there. It's for the group. And so you're able to hear it in a way differently than if you're just sitting in a counseling session.
Yeah, and not only that, it probably opens their eyes to, hey, we're not the only ones. Like, these other people have similar problems that we do, or other problems that, wow, I'm glad that's not us, right? We're not that bad after all. I'm sure you've seen all kinds of stuff in your group sessions.
Everything. I mean, I tell people all the time, there's nothing at this point you could tell me that I have not heard, because we've seen it all, and we've seen all of those types of situations stay.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about COVID for a minute here. So oddly enough, a survey by Bowling Green State University revealed a surprise that divorce rates in the number of U.S. states this COVID time actually dropped. So they're looking at divorce rates dropping. So analysts believe that it may be due to couples simply delaying divorce for practical reasons during the pandemic. What are your thoughts on this, Kimberly?
You know, I think like many of those people, that there could be a lot of reasons. And even when we look at research, you have to look at it. It's so many angles. So could it be because of all the shutdowns? I know that many of the people who contacted us, they said courts were closed for a long period of time. And so their divorce proceedings ended up getting delayed. But there's also part of this that, and I would love to see that, because couples were stuck together, it forced them to work on issues in a healthy way and they got healthier. I think that would be amazing.
And Kimberly, any final advice to anyone watching who has a marriage just hanging by a thread?
My best advice that I would give you is to please not give up hope. Because while what you're experiencing, I know hurts you're confused. You don't know who to trust. You don't know where to go. What I want to encourage you with is that there are things that you can begin to do. You can begin by working on yourself, becoming the best that you can be, and then also learning how to change the way that you communicate with your husband or with your wife, because those are the two things that begin to break down when marriages begin to break down. We lose sight of ourselves. We start focusing on our spouse and overanalyzing the relationship, getting our anxiety up, but we also lose sight of how to communicate well. And these are two important things that you can begin doing right now, no matter what your spouse is doing, no matter what they're focused on, no matter how they're responding.
That is some great advice there. Kimberly Holmes is the CEO of Marriage Helper. Thanks so much for your time today, Kimberly. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. I really appreciated being with you.
Absolutely. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.